There we go. Awesome. Cool team. Hey, thanks heaps for all being online with our fundamental movement PLD. Obviously, you teachers are just getting back into your term four, so I could imagine you're off to a flying start. So thank you for giving up your time to be here. I'm really excited to introduce Ellie Davidson from Sport New Zealand. So really lucky to be linked up with you. So Ellie is the Senior Regional Play Consultant at Sport New Zealand. So a wealth of knowledge around fundamental movement. So thanks, Megan, for the connect with Ellie, and we'll let Ellie take it away and talk us through her wisdom. Thanks, Ellie.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know about wisdom there, Mark, but hey, thanks very much for the opportunity, and and making to be able to make that connection alongside you guys as well. So that's all cool, right? So let's jump into it. Okay, so a little bit. So I thought I'd just do a bit of an intro. Ko ai au, ko Ellie Davidson toko ingoa. I'm based in Te Whanganui, Aotearoa. My background, so I'm actually a teacher by trade, a primary teacher by trade. I studied up in Palmerston North. And after I finished my teacher, I didn't actually get my teacher registration here straight away. I shot off to the UK, as we all do, get some teaching over there, get some experience of traveling and everything like that. And so I was over there teaching in the UK for just over 2 years. So I got my QTS over in the UK. So I taught Lidleys, so year one and year twos. And I thought I'd better come home and actually get my New Zealand teacher qualification. So came back home, taught in Wellington, taught at a Dooley school. Not that I was a Dooley, but the amount of times I got asked if I was Catholic by the parents, and I had to put my hand up and honestly say, "Look, sorry, I'm not." But I had a great time teaching. Again, I taught the Lidleys. As I was saying before we kind of kicked this off, actually, that the stuff that I'll kind of touch on tonight, I wish I knew as a teacher, because I probably would have approached my teaching differently, to what I had been doing. So after finished teaching, I actually moved across. I wanted a break from teaching. The politics. I mean, you guys are in it. You know what it's like, and it can kind of get a bit too much at times, right? So I was fortunate to get a job with the then what they call now is Liquid Water, but Sport Wellington at the time. And I was able to be part of a national initiative by what was then called Spark, which was called Active Movement, so on the 0 to 5. So that was across all regional sports trusts across New Zealand. And that focused on the importance of brain development and movement for 0 to 5-year-olds, but there was always that overlap more to the 7-8-year-olds sometimes as well, right? And that was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I learned so much there. I also had my own son during that time as well. He's now 14. And going back, I went back part-time after I had him after a couple of years, and actually thought, you know what, family is a bit more important than than managing teams and stuff. So I became a full-time mum. And then going back into the workforce, and I was able to get a position with Upper Hutt City Council, which is a smaller council here in Wellington, and I managed the sport and rec of the council team there. So that was supporting community events, sports clubs, schools. What else did we do? We set up a recycle program of bikes and stuff with the prison, which is pretty cool. So really, some really cool community development stuff. And then I was able to shift into my current role here at Sport NZ. So I've been at Sport New Zealand now for 4 years. As Mark alluded, I'm within the play team. I'm one of the regional consultants, so able to really help leverage and support across the regions with the play initiatives that we invest in regional sports trust with. So really lucky I get to work with amazing people internally, but the external people, in terms of those people who are out and about within the regions, the ones that do the hard money and these guys really fill my cup. So I was really lucky in terms of talking to Megan and Tim about this opportunity to connect back in. So this is kind of, it is kind of like my bread and butter. But just the take I'm going to be talking through with you guys tonight, hopefully will just start to kind of instigate some thinking that you might already have in your mind, or perhaps some questions that you might be thinking of as well. So we've got we've got an hour, so I'm just, please honestly feel free to chuck a question into the chat, however you kind of really want to roll with tonight as well. So just in terms of what we'll look at covering tonight, what are the fundamental movement skills? Very high level, to be honest. Then we'll look at the bucket of knowledge, which is something might be quite new for some people, but really looks at the connection around fundamental movement skills, how that really supports in terms of kids' movement and how that relates to the cognitive development of tamariki as well. And then to be able to look at in terms of your environment, so flipping it around, what have we discussed, and then actually how can we start to articulate what our environment can provide around that fundamental. So it looks more at the unstructured curriculum, so looking at what you've currently got in your school environment, so that playtime, lunchtime opportunity as well. I've just made a note down the bottom there, which is around the development of physical literacy through quality play experiences through time, space, and permission. So the terminology, I guess, of physical literacy is still kind of around in terms of providing, I guess, that application through fundamental movement skills. So if I could probably say that the terminology of fundamental movement skills is probably less used within our Sport New Zealand context, as I guess where I'm taking it from. But it's still there, right? Like it's still part of the delivery approach within the curriculum, and how can these the fundamentals actually be, I guess, supporting each other with within the teaching practice as well. So just in a high level opportunity here, just talking about like within the fundamentals, we've got the three areas. We've got your locomotor, your manipulative, and your stability pieces. Diving into the research, but also the meaning and the delivery upon the fundamental movement skills. Locomotor movement opportunities is kind of like the number one to go to first before the focus of the manipulative and the stability. So these are just some examples underneath each of these around actually what can be taught, but also if I remove that layer, I guess, of the teaching opportunity, actually to be looking at what our environments can be providing as well. So that lunchtime, playtime, what gear you have across your physical environment within the school, to see, okay, are we offering a good selection? So really important to kind of think about what we teach within our curriculum time is really important. Kids will take what you teach them within their curriculum time out to the playgrounds, and they'll play with it, they'll adapt it, they'll change it up and down to actually what suits them and their friends within the environment. And then it's more than likely they're going to be repeating that exercise on their way home, back to school the following morning as well. So just know that although you might teach something within that curriculum period, it's highly likely if the kid's going to be enjoying it, they're going to be repeating it in their own environments as well with their friends, and they will change it. So what they call that, what do you call that? I guess it's around the environmental modification. So they're modifying what they're doing to suit their own needs as well. In terms of the manipulative and the stability one, there's different environments perhaps different topics that these really relate to as well. So, as we know, like the striking, for example, can be aligned to sports. So it's obviously always that progression that we make sure. So, for example, if we look at I always look at the example of swimming. So swimming freestyle. for us to swim freestyle, or to teach freestyle swimming, we have to break it down into so many aspects, don't we? We just can't throw the kids in the water and go, right, okay, we're going to be doing freestyle. This is how you do it, you know, breathing, floating, kicking, all these aspects. And so kids need to have foundation skills in order to put everything together. So the skill is the end result, which is swimming or freestyle. But there's all these components that need to be put into place before they can actually apply those into the movement. So if we look at freestyle, they have to be able to float. Children have to be able to put their head into the water and blow bubbles. Children need to be able to kick. They need to be able to have arm rotation. They need to be able to have their body needs the two sides of their body need to be doing two different things whilst at the same time, if I can say. So when they're doing the arm rotation, only one arm actually moves, the other one actually is in a circular motion as well, so not both kind of moving at the same time. So there's a lot of aspects that children need to do, and some people can call that the thinking task, where kids actually have to focus on what they have to do as well. But if we flip it into our school environment in terms of the outside play, have a think around actually is the environment that we're offering within our schools actually providing a good range of opportunities where kids can practice all these fundamental movement skills outside of that curriculum teaching time. Okay, so why do we need to be teaching fundamentals? Basically, in terms of developing children's motor development, I've put this as number one because for me personally, in terms of the child's developmental approaches, this is really, really critical. So it develops children's social, physical, and cognitive growth. Simply put, movement actually helps to develop the brain and the body. We all know the importance of movement and brain development, how that actually supports children to grow a brain that is ready for learning, and this is really, really critical here. So we've got here around the links to brain development and ready for learning. So that's been a really interesting topic. Where often, and I can give an example of our workplace where we're talking about you know, the importance of sport and being physically active and what do we need to do. And so, you know, there's a lot of talk around what we can do in terms of the curriculum, in terms of physical education, health and wellbeing and PE, but actually kids physically need to be ready for learning as well. So if a child is not ready for learning, if they do not have the developmental skills and attributes to be ready for learning, kids aren't going to learn. We can't put them into a box where they have to be learning this. If a child cannot sit on their bottom on the seat or on the mat, how can they start to be able to concentrate with what the teacher's really going to be talking about? So there's some really critical elements which can be an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper later on. There's also a lot of growing evidence suggesting that the development of motor skills is directly associated with other aspects of development in the early and middle life, such as the social, emotional, and cognitive development. So again, the developmental model, but also the fundamental movement skills are really critical to be developing children's social, emotional, and cognitive development. If children are not exposed to fundamental movement skills, there can be some negative effects on their social well-being and overall emotional well-being as well. They can develop developmental competency, so they can lack in that, and they can tend to also lack in terms of being physically active beyond the school years as well. Part of that can also be because they don't have the skills to be able to participate, to be physically active as they get older. So fundamental movement skills to a certain point, it looks at, you know, if we're doing throwing and catching, it assumes that all children can throw and catch, but we also need to consider there's going to be a small percentage of kids in our classrooms that don't have the skills to be able to have the hand-eye coordination to be able to catch a ball. So if we think about a basketball, softball, excuse me, tennis ball, soccer ball, netball, those balls themselves, the trajectory of the ball being passed to a child, because those objects are quite heavy, they move from A to B quite quickly. Okay. If a child does not have the developmental ability to track the moving object at a rate that their body or their brain can connect to their hands, well, I need to have my hands in this place and this place. If they don't have that, they're not going to be able to catch the ball, because their connection between their brain, their eyes muscles, and their hands still needs to be developed further. So taking it a step back and using balloons, feathers, bubbles, anything that is slow moving at a rate that actually the child can track that object at a rate that they can track it, send information back to the brain to ensure that their hands are in the right place to be catching. So it's taking a little bit of a step backwards to see where these kids are as well. Kids will probably see themselves as failing if they can't be kept up to speed, I guess, in terms of that developmental aspect of being able to catch a ball with their peers. They'll be the last ones to be picked for a team sport if it's, if they're playing. Their confidence, their self-confidence will decline. They'll probably go into a little bit of their own little rabbit hole themselves, and they will struggle, and that gap will get bigger and bigger as they grow older. So that's, I guess, a really key driver for me is actually around this, kids need to be developmentally ready. What are some aspects that we need to look at? We love research, right? We love it. So here are just a couple of bullet points. At the end, I do have some other material that we can refer to as well. So according to the embodied cognition theory, cognition including executive functioning, okay, EF, is based on motor development. So basically saying that motor development, fundamental movement skills, has that strong connection to cognitive thinking, higher order thinking, ability to be independent, and so on. Motor development offers new opportunities for young children to actively explore their physical and social environment through a perception action cycle, which promotes cognitive development. Okay, so through their own environment, so if we're just removing it from the curriculum based into the school environment, they are able to actively explore with confidence their own physical environment that they have. Okay, their confidence will grow by applying those fundamental movement skills into their own environment. So there's a really cool relationship between what is taught, okay, in a safe environment within the curriculum space, and how children actually apply the teaching that you've been, carrying out with them into their own environment without that structural support from an adult. They're kind of practicing it. And finally, the acquisition of new cognitive abilities in turn allows children to develop more complicated motor skills. So think about here, this example, think about the swimming activity in terms of freestyle, okay? They need to be able to, it's kind of like layer upon layer upon layer. If they can float, they can put their head in the water, then they float. There's a progression in the swimming with littlies, and that's exactly, I guess, the stages that we work through with kids as well for the fundamentals. So it talked about here in terms of this first one here around including EF, which is executive functioning. What happens if a child does not have the executive function present? Okay, so executive function is a higher order thinking. Okay, so it's kind of going beyond the essentials, but actually, how can that really be added value around my cognitive development here? So you might look at some of these points and think there could be some children within your class. There could be some children that you might know of outside of the school environment. But that's not also to say that the reason why some of these children that you're thinking of, it might not be the crux in terms of the answer around the fundamentals. You might be able to draw some correlations. If you think about from a physical aspect, how are they in terms of the executive functioning within the classroom setting too. Okay, this, I guess, is another opportunity to look at something that relates to the executive functioning. So if we think about these executive functioning, this is like what poor executive functioning might look like, what it might present with kids. This also relates to this next slide, which is around actually there's a lot of information that kids need to have in order to be able to have executive functioning. We also call it readiness for learning as well. Okay. So this here is called the bucket of knowledge. This is from a resource that, gosh, is about 15 years old. The source is called Get Ready for School Foundation Skills. Actually, if you go onto YouTube, if you type in Get Ready for School Foundation Skills, I think it's chapter 1, they pretty much call it. There's actually a recording, and this is where I've taken this example from. So the bucket here represents the brain. And if we think about, and again, I might refer in terms of early childhood, but because what we're finding is more children are kind of heading into the school space, this kind of really overlaps to 7, 8, 9-year-olds in terms of their learning, right? So if we would like a child to be, so these are all holes. These are all holes within the bucket. And the A, B, C, and the 1, 2, 3 are at the top. So these are the things we want kids to be able to learn. We want them to be able to read, write, need to be able to count and do maths. Okay, so they're the top parts. These are kind of the high order thinking. Underneath, these are all these other plugs that need to be filled. At the very, very bottom, we have postural and primitive. These are the postural reflexes and the primitive reflexes. So the primitive reflexes are what we're born with. Literally, if I can kind of get into a little bit of detail, the primitive reflexes with babies, they develop in utero, they are used during the birth process. After they are born, those primitive reflexes are inhibited and the postural reflexes kick in. All right. So kids kind of go, babies kind of go through that. Then the next layer above that are our senses. So sight, vision, taste, hearing, proprioception, I've also popped in there as well. And those other 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, those other 12 orange holes are things such as hand-eye coordination, developing a dominant side, development of large muscles, auditory discrimination, midline, crossing our midline, all those things there. So we need to have all those holes plugged basically to go, right, the child has developed this, I say skill, or, human development or motor development, because every time we plug those holes, knowledge will be retained for our kids. So if we think about this bucket that represents the brain, and we've plugged postural reflexes, primitive reflexes, ABC, 1, 2, 3, and we pour water. So water will represent knowledge. We pour that water into the bucket. If we haven't plugged those holes, all that knowledge that we're trying to teach these kids will just seep out, okay, because they haven't been in a position, I guess, in terms of their motor development to be ready for learning. And this is where I guess we come in with our fundamentals. So you can see here we've got our gross, fine, visual, shuts out distraction, laterality. Some of these you'll recognize. Some of these you will recognize in terms of some of that, there'll be outcomes based on the fundamental movement skills. So you've got like striking, for example, will be your hand, like your hand-eye, but also your gross and fine motor skills. You've got your visual reception, basically being able to visually see a moving object amongst everything within our environment. Directionality, which way we're going to, how we're going to be, positioning our body to be able to strike an element or to be moving. Language is really important. We know kids, a lot of kids learn, you've got your auditory, your visual, your kinesthetic learners. If we combine all three of those for children alongside language, that will be a massive bonus. So if we talk about position, so if we think about under, between, over, next to, behind, on top of, underneath, all those positional places that kids need to know about, if we just talk about those positions as a language, it won't mean much to them. If they physically do it and also talk about it, then their ability to retain that will be much, much stronger, and if they can apply it as well. Our third part here is around our senses. So I talked about, we know what our 5 key senses are, but I've also popped in here vestibular and proprioception. So vestibular is our inner ear. Okay, that's the one that, that's the child, let's just say, that's a child who sits at the back of the room and spins on their bottom. Spins around, spins around, spins around. That could be the child that we might, as teachers, might go, that's the child I need to bring up to the front, sit by my foot so I can tap him or her to remind them to be sitting still, because they're not sitting still. If they're not sitting still, they're not listening. But that child, their vestibular system is wanting to be moving, so their body is reacting. Their vestibular system is the one that actually keeps them upright. Proprioception is your unconscious awareness of where you are. So if we close our eyes, we know kind of what state our body is in, if it's upright or to the side. Also, proprioception is knowing that when we are asleep in bed and we wake up suddenly, we know where the door is, where the windows are, and where the orientation is around us. Our proprioception tends to be out of kilter a little bit if we stay overnight in a different room, in a different bed, if we're out traveling. The pillows are different. They're not the same pillows. The weight of the blanket is different on my body to what I usually have at home. The firmness of the bed is different to what I usually have as well. So these here are all elements which, if we reflect upon the fundamental movement skills, they will all provide attributes to achieving good quality fundamental movement skills that we have. Does anybody have any questions or uncertainties around any of those plugs? So if we think about plugging these in, you could focus on some of those in terms of like a lesson approach, but a lot of this will come through just offering kids different and wide experiences of being physically active within the environments that you've got. So thinking about these ones, the plugs, ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, they're the ones that we need to be focusing on. But in order for children to be able to retain our ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, how do we ensure that all these plugs are actually, all these circles are plugged so a child has experience and those opportunities as well? So if we look at our environment, so this is, I guess, where we can start to look at how we support our environment, what our environment currently offers for children. How do we, and I use this word quite a lot, how do we dissect it? How do we pull it apart to go break it down and say, this is what our children, our tamariki, or this particular child will develop whilst playing on this piece of equipment. This, therefore, can relate to their fundamental movement skills, but also it can help to support the classroom environment as well. But let's just kind of focus on the dissection. and the fundamental movement skills that might relate to this piece of equipment. I tend to choose I say easiest, but most playgrounds will have a slide, I'm hoping. If not, that's all cool. But the slide tends to be quite common. So if we break down, and this would be a really cool opportunity, please pop something in the chat, or by all means, you can just call it out. If we look at the piece of equipment that is the slide, and there's no particular order, what are some things that kids will be doing in order to carry out the exercise, or the exercise of going down the slide? Let's kind of break it down, just call it out, and see what we come back with.
So they'll be trying to work out how high the slide is.
Yep. So depth perception, judgment. Yep.
How fast they're going to go, the speed down it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I guess to get to that speed, or to decide, they could probably decide what position they're going to be in.
How am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Am I going to get up there to even start with? Am I going to go up the slide?
Yeah.
Am I going to go up the ladder? Am I going to...
Yep. And how would they go up the ladder? If you think about how you might have seen kids climb a ladder. Now I say that and you think, what are you on about? But you'll probably notice there's two types of ways that kids will climb a ladder. You might think it's real dumb, but this will happen.
1 foot on each bar, and then some would do like 2 feet on each bar, and their hands aren't going in junction, I guess, with their legs.
Totally. Yep. Yep. So you'll see what they call cross patterning, which is like, when kids crawl, right? Opposite hand, opposite foot, opposite knee, they're kind of crawling like that. So that's called cross patterning. That's the first stage that the two hemispheres of the brain actually work together. And that is really important. Sorry, who said that? I'm trying to find who said that.
It was Billy, top of the class. I was thinking it, Bill.
And it's dark outside. It's 8 o'clock and it's dark here. Look at that. Crazy. So yes, cross patterning. If a child has crawled, at the time it's like a thinking task. They've got to kind of, learn it. And then it becomes automatic. So when they will climb ladders, they will naturally opposite hand, opposite foot motion. All right. Most likely, now it's not always going to be the case, but most likely children who haven't crawled will struggle to climb up a ladder. They would be able to do it because their body will find ways to overcome the fact that they can't do opposite hand, opposite foot. So they will likely, as Billy said, do 1 hand, 1 foot, with 2 feet together, and they'll work their hands and feet together in a different way. Okay. So if we think about
just when you said that, Ellie, just because I'm thinking Billy's going to be thinking, what are they doing if they're not crawling? But they're bum shuffling, right? Is there any other way that babies,
like a commando crawl?
Oh, the commando crawl, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I was just thinking, is Billy going to know what they're doing if they're not crawling?
Yeah. And we're doing jeepers. That's a whole nother child development in that space, and little babies. Well, that's like a whole new chapter. But it actually, and this is the thing, right? So like sorry, I am diverting, but when babies go down the birth canal, at the time, us mothers are not thinking, oh, they're doing this. It's painful, right? But babies are actually using like the push away reflexes. So they're pushing with their feet, against the womb and the canal passage to be able to get out. And that also helps once they've been born to enable them to be able to crawl as well. So it's using it push away. There is research also that, and this is not a bad thing, it's just something to be aware of, that for children who were born C-section, because they didn't use that reflex, that push-away reflex, they haven't been able to use the push-away reflex and inhibit it within them. So Some, now again, underlining, some children who are C-section babies don't crawl. So if that's the case, particularly with ECEs, and if ECEs are really onto it around the child development, they will be able to help to support that child to be able to crawl. So they'll be able to kind of help with some movements and assisting the baby to be able to do it. But it's fascinating. Like, it's just fascinating, some of the stuff that does come through as well. So, okay, right. So we divert. So also going up the ladder, cool. Yeah, either one by one or cross patterning. What about with their hands, and how could they be holding the rungs of the ladder? And again, you probably think it's a stupid question because they just hold it.
Like a death grip.
What's a death grip?
Like holding on for dear life. Like, they build those things high down here. Like, they are holding on for life. Like,
totally. Yep. They are. Yep. More specifically, Ellie. Okay. What position is their thumb when they're holding on for dear life?
Over or under?
Over the top, or is it underneath? You're right.
Probably should be under, should it? Geez, I don't know. Wow.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Kids will just do what's comfortable. End of the day, they'll do what's comfortable. But in a, I say correct. No, correct is the wrong word. In a safety way, in a safe way, we would probably encourage kids to wrap their thumbs underneath the rung. Okay, if it's over the top and they slip, then their thumb can actually be damaged. All right, so if you think about rungs, like even on monkey bars when they're just hanging, tuck that thumb underneath. If you've got parachutes or anything, if they're gripping anything, wrap that thumb underneath. This also relates really well to using this little thing here. Okay, so again, it goes from that large muscle skills to the fine. If we want them to be holding onto a rung or a piece of bar with their thumb underneath, that relates really well to holding the pencil where that thumb is wrapped underneath again. Okay, so it has a really cool relationship to the formal learning, if you can say, as well. So the gripping of hanging, swinging, anything like that, the main muscles that will be used will be your large muscles. But these guys here are really, really important to be developing as well. So, yep, that rung thing, wrapping them underneath as best we can, right? Kids will just do whatever's comfortable, but that's what we need to look at. Okay, cool. If we go another layer deeper, so how they're doing going up the ladder, you've got the fingers underneath with the rungs. What muscles will they be using to be able to maneuver from one step on the ladder to the next step on the ladder?
Suppose either trying to push off their legs or maybe drag themselves up with their upper body.
Yep, absolutely, Mark. Yep, bang on. Okay, so you got your large muscle skills there, you've got your upper body strength and your lower body strength or your legs there, right? Okay, so this is, I guess, where we talk about when we dissect, and this is how deep we can go to dissect, because it all has that relationship back to those fundamental movement skills. All right. Mint. All right, so they're up the top, they've got themselves up to the top. They're obviously going to be, however they wish to get down that slide is completely up to them, but more than likely there'll be a safe way or perhaps a school rule that will reinforce the way that they should be going down in a way that is safe and they won't be able to hurt themselves. Because I heard the slides down south are pretty gnarly. More than likely, kids want to go face down. They want to go on the with their feet on their stomachs going down first. However, they kind of want to go down. But you guys nailed it before in terms of actually looking at the depth perception. So they will judge themselves. In terms of a risk element as well, they will know their limits with their risk. And the school environments, every school has rules, and they're all mostly perhaps in there for a good reason. But actually, allowing the kids to be able to make that judgment will be really quite cool as well. So once they kind of get down to the bottom, how actually, whilst they are traveling down the slide, what could be something that they could be developing? If I go back one slide, and if we look at the bucket, is it going to be on there? It might be. You might be able to see something. Any of these orange or could possibly be red elements of the bucket that could be developed whilst those tamariki are going down the slide?
Potentially they're like body awareness. I'm trying to think. We've got a 5 and a 3-year-old and getting their legs and caught up on things and yeah, that side of it.
Yep. What parts of the body I have and where are they? Where do they need to be? Yep. Body awareness, because teachers might go, sit on your bottom. And if a little doesn't, what is my, I mean, they might well not know what their bottom is, but, sit on my, how do I sit on my bottom? Because, that's quite a different task to be able to sit on my bottom sometimes. Or the teacher might say, hold on to the, to the bar at the top. So again, like that whole thing around language, if we are not physically there, we have to use our language to explain what kids need to do. Okay, as well as reinforcement the whole time. Okay, and that positive celebration side. Cool, yes. And so, yep, so the body awareness. Directionality could be quite something as well. If they haven't gone down the slide face first or head first, arms out in front, their body would not have actually kind of experienced something like that before. If they, even coordination to get their body onto the slide could be one as well. I've got to put my bottom here, my legs here, my arms here, my head's got to face this way. So all these little things. Vestibular, so their balance, because if they have to sit upright or have to lie down, the body is in a very different position from the start to perhaps what it will be at the end as well. Cool. Okay, so that's going quite deep. If we talk about dissection, that is what we mean about dissecting. So you can go, right, I know when a kid plays on this piece of equipment, they are going to be developing what we call a pincer grip, or the grip, their hand-eye coordination, because they've got to move their hands in their into positions. Also foot-eye coordination, because they have to be able to move their feet in terms of where they have to be on the ladder. Upper body strength by pulling themselves up to the next rung. Lower body strength by pushing, using their feet to be pushing their body upwards to project themselves up. They have to be able to, what else do we get onto that, with their body awareness as well. So there's so many elements just by one piece of, simple piece of equipment. If we then go, okay, let's look at in terms of our fundamentals. So if we, I should have actually put the slide back onto it. If we go back to our fundamentals, okay, and if we look, what out of these three main ones, which one of these three would perhaps be the main fundamentals that will be exercised through the slide? Which fundamental skill, what motor skill, movement skill, locomotor, manipulative, or stability? What would be your top one or top two?
For me, it'd probably be on the stability side of it. Hanging, extending, flexing, just to climb up and down.
Stopping, very important on a slide.
Yes, Megan,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that's landing, flexing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So that's perfect. Like the ability to hone in on one piece of equipment and go, okay, this is probably more dominant in the stability side in terms of our fundamental, fundamentals. What could be another piece of equipment that you could do the same with? So if you had a map of your school environment and you, I guess if you go into Google Maps, like that's a perfect one. You can actually zoom into your school. If your school hasn't been recently updated, perhaps in the last couple of years, you'll be able to kind of see where equipment is, or where fixed equipment, but also where some of the loose or free play equipment is as well. You'll be able to list out, if I can say list out, but you'll be able to articulate what fundamental movement skills kids will be developing, but also maintaining, practicing, exercising, extending themselves on, within your environment. So again, it's looking at how well as a whole our school environments can be supporting our fundamentals, and also this bucket. Okay. And a whole nother chapter basically of this was, we can see, okay, so how does this support the formal learning environment in the school as well, in terms of the classroom settings. Okay. Whilst doing this, the kids are also developing their problem-solving skills, their communication skills, their language skills, their cognitive function, everything that we want kids to be developing in terms of that higher order thinking. So we have these little kids here. Okay, if we think about the top first one, doesn't know where to start. If we think about doesn't know where to start within the classroom or an activity perspective, but also within the slide, if they're standing at the bottom of the ladder, maybe they're not standing at the bottom of the ladder, maybe they're standing at the bottom of the slide and go, I don't know where to start to be able to play with this thing. Okay, so kids will learn by repetition. Sometimes they say 400 hours to be able to have enough repetitions before it becomes hardwired in their brain. Okay, so there's all these things in terms of giving these kids the tools to be able to practice, for them to be able to continue those elements of practice in a safe environment. The school is the best environment because kids don't always have this massive range of opportunity in terms of being physically active at home. School is the best place to take those risks, to be able to get on that slide and go down head first. They might not have the stairs at their own house to be able to slide down or go down the bottoms and all the stairs. So the school environment has got to be this place where there's this place of excitement that they know they're going to be able to practice all these skills. And as a teacher and within the education space, how do we look at our environment to go, okay, we know that we're actually contributing and supporting the environments that they have it within the curriculum space, but also giving them enough challenges within the school as well. Right. So, told you I'll have readings. What I'll do, Mark, was with these ones here, so I'm quite lucky, so I can click on it and there'll be a link to the articles. Some of these are actually research articles. This last one here, which is the go-to teacher, that has some, I wonder if I click on it and I can drag it. Where's it going to open up? Does this come up on your screen?
Yep.
Yep, perfect. Okay. So this talks about fundamentals. Some little quotes. It is Australian, but that's okay. Don't hold it against them. Again, we talk about striking. Okay, so how that striking can be related against all these other elements in terms of it's sport, but what are the different types ones? I'm going to skip, sorry, because it's down the bottom. I wanted to show you. Where is it? It's down the bottom. Here it goes. So it's got further resources at the bottom, okay, that you can also look at doing. So you've got that one. Association between fundamental movement or motor skills and executive function. Again, that's another really cool one. Where did that go when I clicked on it? Somewhere really exciting. It's over here. Okay, so again, this is a really cool one. This is a study. So again, a couple of years old, two years old. I didn't put all the authors because there's 3 of them. But again, some really useful quotes and some supporting material around the importance of fundamentals and how that relates to that brain, okay, that cognitive functioning as well. So it's kind of taking this perspective here, it's kind of taking it, we've got it within the, schools have the development of fundamental movement skills around striking, locomotor stability across perhaps different terms of the year, but it's kind of like another layer of saying why. And a lot of parents be like, why teach them striking skills? Well, actually, if you peel it back in terms of the layers of an onion, it's beyond the actual task or the skill. It's actually all these things, because parents want the best for their kids. And if we kind of take it, if you decide to kind of take a lens around actually cognitive development, this will be another really good hook for these parents as well. So we've got some, like a journal in terms of Journal of Science and Medicine and Sport. How fundamental are fundamental movement skills? This is quite a cool one, actually, that one. Just quickly show. And again, it's a research document. Okay. But this is, I guess, the league that we are kind of working in now is around actually, we always talk about the importance of fundamentals, but who's done the research behind it? And so these articles really help to support the opportunity for those discussions. Something that might be a little bit more closer to home, that is probably get your hands on. Look, I did QR codes. How cool is that? Anybody want to try it? Because it took me a few minutes to figure out how to do it. So perhaps the first one isn't as good, so don't do that one, right? The second one, the Move Well resource. So the Move Well resource is in every single school in New Zealand. It is, oh yes, great, it does work. Cool bananas. So the Move Well resource provides us with some opportunities around beyond the fundamental movement skills. So it's around like how do we support like the social connections with kids around working together. So that has games and opportunities that really take that type of lens onto it. But again, it will be an opportunity where kids will, it might be a game you play in PE. Kids love it. They're going to take that game from PE out into the playground and play it at lunchtime and playtimes, and perhaps play it with their whānau when they head home as well. So that's a really cool resource. So that was developed in conjunction with ACC, PENS, AUT, and MOE. And I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure PENS have actually got the contract to be delivering it, although it was delivered in conjunction with us. It's something that they can deliver as well. So there are workshops on that one there. Cool. So 5 minutes to spare. One thing I didn't do, and it could be a resource, I don't know, it might be something you want to have a laugh at, but if people are familiar with Longworth Education, and Sarah Iono, who does her podcast, I can't remember the name of her podcast, her and I had a chat a couple of months ago, and we talked about recess or playtimes across New Zealand, but also internationally as well. So I can add that link if you want, Mark, onto the Have a Laugh page perhaps. But it was really cool talking to Sarah. She's really an amazing lady actually, and is a big advocate for quality play opportunities for our kids as well. So that's me. If you've got any questions, please fire them through. Hopefully I didn't bore everybody on a Tuesday night, but appreciate the opportunity to have a moment with everybody, start a really cool conversation, and hopefully you'll be able to take away one or two key things just to think, okay, so how can we elaborate this a little bit more and have a bit more of a robust foundation around the importance of those fundamentals.
I've got a question straight for you. So I'm a secondary school trained teacher, and obviously what we're seeing is a lack of fundamental skills coming into secondary school in year 9. So what would you say would be the age that we should be focusing on fundamental movement skills?
The age we should be focusing on, it should be able to go all the way through, right? I see it as something that is like a sliding scale. So I talked about at the beginning, if a child can't catch a rugby ball because their eye tracking is not quick enough to be able to track it and move their body to be able to catch it. Slide it down to that, to one end of the scale where actually, okay, let's look at balloons and feathers and bubbles and light stuff. Because I think fundamentals, it's kind of in the middle, it's kind of targeted or set up to be in the middle, but actually there's a whole realm of kids actually who are not ready. So I'm starting to work with some coaches in sport development, because they're like, it's those kids who can't catch, they're in the too hard basket. What do we start to do? So there's all this pre-stuff in terms of the fundamentals that we can start to work on. We call it like individualized down. How do you make it a little bit more simple and more achievable for these kids? Because kids know who can't, who aren't able to reach that stage yet. And we've got to really help to support those kids to play catch up. The best opportunity to play catch up is in that probably up to 7, 8 years of age. After that, it can be done, but it's harder because their brains are so much more advanced in terms of development, is ready to be moving on.
It's quite young, isn't it?
Yeah, so this whole awareness piece, right? That bucket is critical. Yeah. Good question.
I've got so many questions for you, but I probably should get someone else.
I'm going to write them in. It's just quite amazing. Like Mark and I have had a few discussions about this, and it gets so deep because there's just so many layers, and you've just nailed it, especially with that bucket thing. Like there's just so many pieces to the puzzle. Yeah.
And there's so many things that need to go on behind like the final product is fundamentals, but actually what is a kid's developed and experienced and actually, solidified before they get to that stage. Actually I think Active Southland, you guys should have the active movement resource manual. I think is still somewhere in your library there.
Do we have a team?
What is it called? Sorry?
It's called, I'm looking at, but I stopped.
Right, what does it look? I'm a visual person, Ellie. What does it look like?
Probably indoor.
Look at this. It's about this thick. Like it's oh hang on, it's got some other stuff in at the front of it. Hang on. Pull out the front one. Here we go. And then what I'll also do is I will undo my screen. And then we'll be able to see. Unblue. Oh, I don't know how to unblue my. Oh, wait. Yeah. So the front, it'll be in a big thick folder. The front of the folder will have like a little bit of paper slipped in, and it'll have like green cottons and stuff all over it.
Is that the same lady that does the moving, I want to say moving smart?
Yep, moving smart.
Yep.
PNP. Yep, Jill Connell. Yep, so I worked with her. And she did a lot of the stuff on the brain development and stuff that we kind of covered tonight.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but makes sense.
Might be there. Hey, Ellie, I was just thinking as well, like the stencils that we got at Active South, and they'd be so good to tick off a lot of those boxes, hey?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and tonight, it was an hour. It was just hopefully enough to start to have some thinking and perhaps continue some conversations. Again, if needed, there is something further if you need something further. But it's just a really cool opportunity to start some discussions as well, and happy to kind of link it back in with you guys.
Even you talked about those 3 fundamental skills, Ellie, looking at skills developing playgrounds and areas and that. They could become really targeted in what they purchase and what they develop. So a coordinated approach rather than this looks like fun. There's a bit more depth to it. So no, it's really good. So good stuff.
Can we apply for it on the Tamanawa Fund?
You hear that voice in the background?
It's okay.
It's an echo in the room.
Can we apply for it on the Tamanawa Fund?
Of course we can.
Yeah, Megan's good at that stuff. Yeah.
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 We can always make it so it's not capital and,
Yeah, put wheels on it and you're away, eh?
yeah, we'll put some wheels on it. We'll be fine. We'll be away laughing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the understanding, it's the meaning behind it, right? You know, like I get a pair of shoes because they look cool. Man, like that's just pathetic, me. But if they look cool, they're really cool. But actually, it's actually that whole, how good is it for you? What are you developing? And practicing and enhancing whilst you're doing it. And same with playgrounds. Once you dissect it, like you've got to be meant to even just do it within your schools, or what, if your teachers online to actually go, okay, what is my school offering, and where are the gaps, and how do you ensure that the environment changes? So, a child who will be at school from like 5 to 12 years of age, if that environment doesn't change over that period of time, how boring would that be? So how do we just kind of bring in just ad hoc things that might just be there for a couple of weeks, and then they might phase out and something else could be brought in.
I think like you said, using the playground so important. I think teachers get kind of fixated on like the P&P equipment and not having the right stuff to be able to do these amazing sessions. They actually need to look around and see what they've already got and make use of that first, or as well as, because I think they forget there is so much in their environment already that they're not tapping into.
Yeah. And what could they use through Te Manawa to enhance it more?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Especially in rural schools,
Yeah.
I think we're pretty lucky, obviously, with having Megan, who's in the play space. Already I go, right, Megan, we need to get you out to all of our schools to assess the play environment, but based around fundamental movement skills, instead of just, we go look at it, oh, cool, you got some things to play with. But are we catering for all ages? I think that's a big one. Like Hiroko Valley School the other day, they probably didn't cater for a lot of the ages there.
Yeah, and also just looking at the play equipment and the fundamental skills that they develop. So you could have one of these and it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to just tap into Ellie's brain for the next month and just find out all the answers to my questions.
Do that for us. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan.
Push it away, Megan. Yeah.
No, look, that's all. Like honestly, like hopefully it's just a starter. Like I don't want to kind of it's like rabbit holes. There's just rabbit holes everywhere in this space. So like I'm here to support, and definitely the Health Active Learning workforce. There will be some additional support around play across the next year as well. That's the year I'm shifting into more. So particularly those will be there next week. I'll be able to have a bit of a yarn further as well. So appreciate your time tonight, team. It's been really awesome.
Cool. Just want to say a big thanks, Ellie, for your time. I know you had tennis and offered tennis, but
it was too windy, so I'm quite glad.
Yeah, thank you for choosing us. I think you've really, for me, you've really simplified it as a step that a teacher or a school could take straight away, is just looking at that play environment. Like the slide, I was just like blown away by that. And I've actually, reflecting back, see that in action with my 5-year-old who's just started school, who could not climb the slide, could not go down the slide. I still remember picking her up one day and she was bawling her eyes out because it was the first time going down the slide, which was too fast. And now she can climb up the slide. She can go down the slide. She does it every possible way. She doesn't have her handbrake of a dad there saying, don't go down that way. So yeah, I think like schools like a Winton school who give permission for the kids to use that slide outside of break times, like this school at the last 15, 20 minutes of the day gives a different younger age group access to it, are actually really supporting fundamental movement. But I'd love that school to let their community know that that's why they're doing that. So yeah, I think you've definitely got my brain in overload because being a parent as well as a facilitator. So thanks heaps for your time. It's awesome.
Kia ora, Ellie. Thanks for coming for us.
It's okay.
Deep South.
Problem. Deep South. Yeah. I'll try and get there down there in person.
Yes, please.
Well. It'll be good. Hey,